my delight to welcome all of you to our presentation this afternoon. For the next 45 minutes, you are in for a real treat as we explore nature and the human experience with two very distinguished and well-respected authors. I'm going to introduce each of them to you and just give you an idea of how our time will flow. Kathy will present first, Drew will present second. I will have some questions for them based upon their presentations. And then for the last segment of our program and our time here this afternoon, we're going to be delighted to take questions. They will be delighted, that is, no questions for you. We'll be delighted to take questions.
I have a lot of questions for you.
From all of you, for each of our authors. So, that having been said, and also if you have not had an opportunity to pick up either Wandering Towards Center or Drew's book, The Home Place, it is my understanding that at the book stand across the street from City Hall, these are available, and each of them will be delighted to autograph a copy for you should you pick one up. So, that having been said, in Wandering Around Center, Kathy Bradley to my left continues her examination of the natural world. These are really wonderful essays, through a prism through which we understand our human experience. The chronological stories, 4 years worth of tales that began life as newspaper columns, are inhabited by wild and unpredictable animals, civilized and unpredictable people, moons, cornfields, tides and floods and droughts. She invites you along on her wanderings in order that they may find their own meaning in the recounting of commonplace events and the lives of ordinary people. And we all know that ordinary people for all of the ages have done extraordinary things, and the way that each of us as a reader is able to connect to the work that you've done here is quite remarkable. Also joining us is J. Drew Lanham. From fertile soils of love, land, identity, family, and race emerges The Home Place. This is a big-hearted, unforgettable memoir by ornithologist and professor of ecology. Did I say that right? I always ornithologist. He's a bird guy, okay? See, in radio writing, we always use the simplest word for everyone. So, and you're about to hear what a unique and wonderfully rare bird he is. He says that about himself, so I didn't think so. Dating back to slavery, Edgefield County, South Carolina, place easy to pass, easy, it's right on the west part of the state, so easy to pass by, on the way to somewhere else. However, it has been home to generations of his family. In this memoir, we meet these...
Our questions that are going to have more ineffable answers we take to church. That's just what we've done as human beings. I've done both of those things, but where I find that I can go to get answers to both kinds of questions is to the natural world. And over the years, I have discovered certain places within the natural world that are my places. Primarily, those places are my family farm, my family's life. Everything I discover are between those two bookends. I can take my questions there, trying to tell me what my answers ought to be. And as I've done that, I've made this very, this is a recent discovery, and I guess I've probably always known this, but I've articulated it to myself recently, is that all of my questions, anytime that you don't know the answer to something, you're going to respond with one of those things, curiosity or fear. And so when my writing is, which is, so with that little bit of background, I have a couple of pieces that I want to read to you from Wandering Towards Center, which is titled Reading and Walking Around, that I probably needed to give people a little bit of background about how I got attached to this. Moved us to the farm when I was a senior in high school, and I can promise you I knew nothing about living on a farm at that time. And shortly thereafter, I left to go to college. So I'm going to read you a little bit closer to you. Sure. Thank you. If you'll let me. No, apparently it won't.
Let's just spin it down just a little bit.
Okay, is that better? Thank you. Okay. The place to which I returned, a farm about 18 miles from town, and the acreage to which which my family had moved during my senior year in high school was not truly home in any way other than the sense of a permanent address. The topography, or the history of the 450 acres on which I had landed. I had a vague notion of the landlines and could identify only the most ubiquitous of the trees. I had some understanding of the wildlife that shared the acreage, but had never met any of them face to face. I returned to the dirt as little more than a reluctant but resigned tourist. And a tourist is what I would remain for some time to come. Then one fall, one of those boards on which I served went to Highlands in the mountains of North Carolina on a retreat. On Saturday afternoon, the board president and hostess for the weekend, Gloria, took the botanist and the excited gesture of a toddler. Look, she displayed not only knowledge but also awe and astonishment, both at nature and at her presence in it. She was not a tourist. She was a participant in the exuberant, elaborate show being put on every day right outside her door. I was embarrassed at my ignorance and envious of her ease in moving through the world of things that lived and died, rose and set. Before we left Highlands, I marched myself into Cyrano's bookstore and bought a copy of the Audubon Society Field Guide to North American Wildflowers and identified spiderwort, goat's rue, blue curl, the dogs as though they were familiar paths. I found gopher tortoise burrows and the rusted lips of turpentine cups strung up my pants legs like stars in a new constellation. I did pricks of pain. So that's a little bit about how I began to love words and that I decided were mine. And those words were college, scholarship, and author. And it only took me until I was 17 for college and scholarship to belong to me, but I was 52 before author became mine. And so I always tell people, hang on to your words that we find early on what we are, who we are. I was about 3 years old. Mama and Daddy had left Keith and me with a babysitter. It was a most unusual event in light of to a gospel sing, a gathering of those background details from a time when I was a toddler. But I am sitting on the couch, vinyl embossed to resemble brocade. My legs stuck straight out in front of the apartment from being completely dark. In my lap was a box of sugar pops, a rare treat in cardboard flaps, grabbed a handful of cereal and pulled it back out. I had developed chanting. K-A-T-H-Y. Third time, Phyllis the babysitter stared directly at me with a star too. These sounds, whatever they might be called, these sounds that I did not realize were letters, were me. I stopped. I didn't say anything else. I didn't look at Phyllis. She didn't say anything either. The blue-gray flickers continued. I probably put my fist back into the cereal box. I don't remember. Obviously, I had heard at some point my parents talking to each other, and something in the tone of voice, the sidelong glances, the use of a whisper in a household where whispers were rare, had alerted me to the significance of sounds I did not understand. K-A-T-H-and-Y. And now I had deciphered the code. I felt like Dorothy walking through the gates of the Emerald City, granted access to something about which I understood only one thing. It was grand. I did not know the word epiphany at age 3, but years later when I read Phyllis Tickle's definition, that is, that moment, that instant in which a clarity so brilliant as to be only divinely possible drops into human life and takes up permanent residence, I was able to understand it at least in part, I think, because of what happened that night. That night, letters and the words they build became my personal possessions. Other people might use them, but they would always be mine. I've told the story before, but it is only in the writing of it, the actual visual writing of it. And it makes it hard sometimes, truth, and at the same time, shields the innocent, dispenses.
With such eloquent words, and that you own those words is one thing, but you share them is something else, so thank you very much. That we share in this place that we are, and it comes from sort of this search, this quest that I think we are constant out there called the Wild Branch Nature Writing Workshop, and was introduced to fellow Southern writers like my friend John Lane there. But this book was born really, I figured out, maybe from the age of, I don't know, about 7 or 8 when I started watching birds. When going up north, as we say, to Vermont, that it's off, and I think it's a salvation. I have a theory that there are 3 things maybe that bind us as Southerners that we need to recognize. There's music, there's food, and there's land. And so in that, growing up in Edgefield, South Carolina, if you don't know where Edgefield is, if you've ever heard of a little event called the Masters, you know, I'm kind of a long iron away from the Augusta National Golf Course, but used to drive past that place wondering what was behind the gates in it, and feeling that I was excluded in some way from it. And so the home place, growing up in Edgefield, a place I share with Strom Thurmond, a home place I share with Pitchfork Ben Tillman, one of the most notorious politicians in this state's history. A home of 10 governors, a place that was probably more responsible for the politics of this country, antebellum, certainly than Charleston ever was. 10 governors, think about that. From a tiny little county on the western edge of the state of South Carolina, on the eastern edge of South Carolina. And so this book, The Home Place, is born of my experiences growing up in Edgefield. 2.5 television channels, really. My cousin in the town of Edgefield had Pong eventually, but I never got to play it. And so my thumbs are pretty normally sized at this point. But it is, as a Southerner, in defending the things that I love about the South and understanding the ties that bind, that land is ultimate escapes, and watching trees and forests. It's a special place to be here and to share a few words, with you. I am a man in love with nature. I am an eco-addict, consuming everything that the outdoors offers in its all-you-can-sense seasonal buffet. I am a wildling, born of forests and fields and more comfortable on unpaved back roads and winding woodland paths. Wildlife ecologist and college professor, father, husband, son, and brother. I hope to some I am friend. I bird, I hunt. I'm a man of color, African American by politically correct hyphenated convention. A smidgen of Scandinavian, shoal. My plumage is a kaleidoscopic rainbow of an eternal hope and the deepest despair. Cast my love affair with nature in shadow, appreciated by some for my different fish out of water. But in all my time wandering, I've yet to have a wild creature question my identity. And forests and fields are not behavior. I resist the easy path and claim the so in declaration, I think the writing process, I went to this, and all I'm state home, I think. I think that in the case, I'm a volunteered for was to get in the car, drive a half North America since 1960, more leisurely than almost places in the state. Free line of plays horrific, a little, I grip the clipboard tighter. We'll see here, so far, I've heard.
Kathy, what did you